Okay, Kathy and Glenn, thank you very much for that. And again, very actionable. There are some great tips on the Lavish Cards website. So lavishcards.com. The wall decor to symbolize your value, whether it's a bridge, right? You're the bridge to your client's goals. The navigational themes that again can just create some energy around your value are exceptional. The ability to create a calendar of how you can get out in front of holidays, client milestones and achievements, and of course, critical life events as they occur. And you might have heard me say in the past, I mean, the beauty of these cards is the impact they have, right? People sort their mail over a garbage can. I mean, make sure that your cards stand out. And of course, Lavish will do that. But not just the impact, the shelf life. People can't bear the thought of discarding these down the road. I mean, I've heard stories of clients who receive the cards and frame them. And I love the stories that Glenn has in terms of when he was in a situation where he captured an image. It's terrific. I encourage you to take them up on their offer to get a sample for yourself and take a tour of the Lavish Cards website and consider the concept of adding in sending your clients a physical calendar. Remember, vapor to paper, so much of your client experience is digital. It's nice to make things tangible that they can hold in their hands. So really great ideas there. And don't be misled by the simplicity of a card. As, you know, even in the last 90 days, slowing life down and paying tribute to what's going on in a client's life or within their family with a great card, that can etch into someone's mind and heart in terms of a really good memory. Okay, so moving along. Well, you talk about talent. And you talk about credibility. Terry and Sherri are going to walk you through, and it'll be rapid fire, on insights on the highly functional team. Whether it means refining your existing team, creating a team with predictable outcomes, or growing your team in the direction of franchise readiness. I can safely say there's nobody anywhere in the industry that has a better command, mastery for what that all looks like. Terry Gronbeck-Jones and Sherri Palle have been with me for a long time, and I respect their skills and how seriously they take this. And the feedback I get from teams is never short of amazing. They've been working with our elite advisory teams going back many, many years. As you're going to learn, exceptional teams accomplish great things. And in this presentation, Terry and Sherri will review our 4-step framework for developing and sustaining an exceptional team. And there is a deep dive behind this in terms of bringing it all to life. But if you're self-motivated, and you have a concept for where some of the adjustments are, this framework will launch you forward. So I'm really looking forward to this presentation. I know the content and of course the presenters very well, but never get tired of hearing them represent it because they do such a great job. So Sherri and Terry, off you go.
Thanks for that amazing introduction, Duncan. Terry and I are delighted to be here as part of the Coiled Spring Virtual Summit today. We want to get right into the topic around exceptional teaming. We're going to walk you through the big reasons why this is so important, and also a 4-step framework to really help all of the advisory teams out there really systematize and organize all aspects of their HR. And I have to be honest with you, many of the teams that I work with, unfortunately, managing the people and the HR is their least favorite component because people are a hard variable to manage. So My hope and desire is that you come away with some really great ideas that will help you get your team to the next level in terms of communication, vision, achieving goals and results, but also feel as a leader, you've got a proactive approach to keeping everything on track. So without further ado, let's hear from Terry.
Thank you so much, Sherri. Indeed, people are your greatest assets. And it's funny, over the years, I've seen some really amazing teams. I've seen a lot of dysfunctional teams. I've even had teams break up in the middle of coaching them. So it's been a real mixed bag. I remember going to I used to go to my grandma's house for lunch every Friday, and she used to be a businesswoman in her own right. Back in the day, back in the 40s, she ran a floor at a major supermarket, the ladies' wear. And she was a real player in the 40s. And I was talking about a dysfunctional team that day with her as we were eating lunch and how bad it was. And she got a knowing look on her face, Sherri. And she said, she said, "Oh, partnerships, a poor ship to sail in." And I made a mental note of that because I thought that was pretty clever. And indeed, that has been the case a lot of the partnerships I've seen. But on the other hand, I've seen a lot of absolutely stellar partnerships. And you know what? People just don't stumble into these great partnerships. They just don't have it well designed. And typically when I see the dysfunctional teams, it's just that they flung themselves together with this notion that we're going to have great synergy, or whatever buzzword that they wanted to use. And it has to be a lot more meticulously planned than that. You don't want two different advisors finally starting to work to each other, and one says, you don't want to do seminar workshops? That's what I like to do. And the other one goes, no, I put that behind me years ago. I don't want to do that. And yet I've run into that very same example. So the point of this story is Sherri and I have a really exceptional, and Pareto, of course, have an exceptional step-by-step program, and we're going to share a lot of those things with you today in order to put together the best team possible. This also segues into how to onboard an advisor to an existing team as well, too, and we do that an awful lot. There's themes of being franchise ready and duplicating what you do over and over and over. It goes on and on. So without further ado, let's get into it.
So here are some of the obvious things that great teams can accomplish. And to Terry's point, it generally doesn't fall in place by accident. Follow grandma's rules and regulations there. It's success by design. And so what we're going to walk you through today is going to help you increase growth in your revenue, your assets under management, your number of referrals. It's absolutely going to increase the value of your business. You're not just selling a book of clients. You're selling an entire system of how you run your business and service your clients. The other thing is it's going to create a legacy and a brand for yourself, for your business, your clients, and your partners. And it's also going to ensure that if you are in that franchise ready state and you are acquiring advisors, and that is another form of growth, that you have high, not only retention rates, but success rates within those teams. So one of the teams I'm working with right now has around 30 different advisors, Terry, that they've added over time. And, we're just going through that concept of understanding who is their ideal advisor and who do they want to actually add to their practice versus taking on sort of anyone and everyone. But regardless whether you're the 2-person team, the 5-person team, the 10-person team, or the one that wants to be franchise ready, we assure you there's going to be stuff that you can take out of this and implement in your practice starting tomorrow, maybe even this afternoon, that will make things improve and enhance as it relates to managing your team.
Did I hear you right? Say 30 advisors?
30. Yes, indeed.
Wow.
30.
That's tremendous.
And the one thing that isn't on that slide, and I'll just add it, ad lib, is when you put some structure and order around how you manage and organize your team and really service and help them promote their own growth is quality of work life. As you heard me say, a lot of advisors, it is their least favorite. It's the hardest to control. It is a tricky place to navigate. Ironically, it's one of my favorite spaces to be in. So I love working with them in this area. But it does bring a level of calmness and peace to this area, which can be somewhat chaotic and stressful for them.
It's interesting. There's a lot of different teams out there, obviously, and some of the most successful ones I realized earlier on, like Michael Gerber in the E-Myth, that you're only successful once you've made yourself obsolete, and certainly that appeals to the franchise-ready business as well too. Certainly, a book of business has some value. for the clients and the assets and the recurring revenue they hold. What about the business that has all that anyway? Of course, they all have that for the most part, the ones that are decent businesses you want to buy. But what about the ones that you could pick up and take across the country and have it set up and follow your procedures and your client onboarding and your clients and have it virtually operate in exact same way? Well, what kind of value does that have? And it has a lot of value. It's triple the business of the ubiquitous sort of book of business, and it has far-reaching other implications as well, too. As we speak right now, I have a team of really successful advisors that are on the hunt for the right business. They're being incredibly selective, and they've gone through the whole Pareto approach, and they are franchise ready to a T. And interestingly enough, they found a guy with a terrific business that checks all the boxes. But this guy is being so particular about who he sells his baby to. It's actually been just a fascinating journey. We're at 2-3 months into it now, and they're golfing. They've had about, I don't know how many meetings now. They just get deeper and deeper and deeper. The gentleman and his team have already cast aside numerous suitors that are interested in buying his business, and now he's got it down to, I think, 2 choices, the team I'm working with and the other team. Guess what he likes, Sherri, about the team I work with? They are franchise ready. They have all their systems in place, and there's just no way in a million years this guy is going to give up to some, inarticulate stranger that's just flying by the seat of his or her pants. It's just not going to happen. So never did my clients think in a million years going through a Pareto system, like whatever it was 7 years ago. Yes, I'm still working with them. What they were doing with me was not only going to be successful in terms of their client acquisition and building, and they quadrupled their business at this point, but would it have implications when they went to buy another business? But it's paying off in spades right now for them, and it's probably going to be one of the deciding factors that they win this particular business, and I'm fairly confident that they will. There's all kinds of there's a myriad of different benefits to getting serious about this stuff.
And it's interesting when it comes to sort of the concept of the franchise ready model. I know initially some advisory teams that I work with are like, oh, no, we don't want to add any other advisors. We just want to keep our team the way it is. And the reality is I tell them, I want you to get your practice systematized to the point that if you were going to open up an office where I'm at on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, you could send me that manual and I could replicate everything you do. And it's interesting because then they sort of see it in a different light. And again, around franchise ready isn't just about adding 10, 20, 30 advisors. It's about maximizing the value of when you sell your business. One of the teams that I've been working with since 2012, so much like you for many, many years, Terry, they do this so well that they were not pursuing other advisors to join them as a growth model, but they are having advisors knock on their door saying, how can we be a part of this? How can we join the plug and play atmosphere you've created? The branding, the classifying, the servicing, the onboard. I mean, they have checked every single box. And even though their mindset wasn't, we want to actively add advisors, they've got people knocking on their door saying, we want to be a part of this and we're willing to pay to be a part of this. So sometimes it happens and it's not really part of your mindset or your original goals. But the reality is every team that we work with is going to be franchise ready in some respect. And most of the advisors that I talk to, especially as it relates to documenting processes and procedures, it's almost like that's something they've dreamed of their entire career. And the neat thing about the Pareto process is that can actually happen. Like, we can make your dreams come true. It's not just something that year after year you say to yourself, I really should document my processes. I want to get everything systematized. So the franchise ready model, initially you might be saying, well, that's not me, but I think it's really everybody out there to varying degrees.
Oh, Sherri, I'm never going to retire. That kind of thing, right? Yeah, we're all headed towards the sunset, and how do you want to deal with that sunset, and what do you want to earn and be as you live through that sunset? And it's good to start thinking about this stuff now, for sure. Exceptional teams approach. Well, we look at it in 4 main areas. Number 1 being, of course, the team integration itself. This is largely the kind of things we do in the Pareto system, total client engagement core program. Of course, the success that comes out of that. You have to start with those 2. You've got to become that franchise ready in the first couple of stages in order to walk the walk, as they say. From there, You can't just start adding advisors willy-nilly into this beautiful thing you've created as well, too. They have to be a good fit for all the hard work that you've done, and that's what the advisor fit process is. And we're gonna walk through these things in a little bit more detail. And of course, the onboarding process. Once you have an advisor that is a mutually good fit for the franchise-ready building that you've made, how do we integrate that person seamlessly and in a way that delights not only them, but your team as well? Just these are the four main areas we look with, and they have to go in sort of that order as well too. I mean, you could do sort of a ramshackle approach of them all, I suppose, but what we found, the teams with the big success, you heard Sherri talking about 30-person teams. Sherri's worked with $1 billion team. I've worked with teams that are close in that as well too. These things typically are not just thrown together. There's a lot of methodical legwork into building these foundations.
So let's start talking about, building this operational blueprint for your advisory practice and really maximizing your team. We're going to walk you through sort of, some key things around, why is this important? And again, we're going to speak to leading with purpose. And again, this is an area because a lot of people don't really like it. They tend to kind of do it on the corner of their desk. It's minimal. It's not proactive. It's not organized. And I will say that when you don't organize and structure how you manage your HR, it really does negatively impact your leadership style. So, everybody on your team is looking to you to guide them as it relates to the vision, and they have the power to make or break that for you. And so, we want to make sure that woven throughout this is really solid leadership practices, and there's no question in their mind by the way that you devote your attitude and energy to this piece of running the business that you really genuinely care about each of your people and how you collectively achieve the advisory vision and goals. We're going to talk about an exercise on who, like really defining clearly. I mean, it's one of my favorite parts of the program. I know Terry's going to walk you through sort of the tool. It's fantastic. It's just really simple one-pagers. I call it like the blueprint for what's going on in your business, really defines everything and anything that's going on. And then finally, we're going to talk about the what. So once we know who's doing it, what are they doing and how are they doing it? Really accurately defining and documenting in great detail all of the different steps to get those things done, not only so that they're done consistently from the client's perspective, because I always have my client hat on and I'm looking for that common thread, those dots to be connected. It's why that franchise concept is so popular. When we go to Starbucks or McDonald's, whatever you prefer for your coffee, we just know what that experience is going to be like. It's the same every time. There's no unpleasant surprises. So that's the value of creating that playbook and documenting your processes. And then the when, articulating all the specific expectations. When are we doing these things? Now that we know the who and the what and how, completely organizing and systematizing. So once you've documented how you're going to do different things within your practice, we're huge advocates of using a CRM to set it and forget it. Workflow the heck out of your business, systematize, set action plans, make sure all of this is just ticking along in the background. All the triggers are coming up and telling you what you need to be doing and when you need to be doing it.
You should copyright that, Sherri. Workflow the heck out of your business.
And so Terry outlined that four-stage framework that we're going to walk you through. And the first section is team integration. And literally every team we work with goes through this section. And this is where it's about synthesizing and maximizing your team, thoughtfully organizing everybody that's there. Just like a coach gets handed a set of players every season, you have to assess their skill set, their experience, what they're really good about, what their strengths, what their passion is, and put them in the proper positions. If you're not thoughtfully organizing where everybody's going to be working and spending their energy, you can have 1 + 1 = 1.5. And usually the reason we add people is to get the 1 + 1 = 3, that synergy, making it better. We're also going to talk about building your playbook. That's what I was referring to about, having absolute consistency and efficiency in everything that you do from not only the operational perspective, but also the client experience. Promoting ongoing professional development. Terry, I'm going to spend a second talking here because this is really important. A lot of times I work with teams who have had the fortune of having team members who have been with them for a very long time. And what happens is that, as Duncan would say, that law of familiarity kicks in. And that's kind of the same way as, it's another way of saying, a kinder way of saying, complacency sets in. So I've worked with teams that have had operations supporting them for many, many years. There's been no professional development. There's no expectations. There's no celebration of achievements or acknowledgments, no discussion of what do we want to do next year for your perspective as a role. So this is a really, really key component. One of the teams I'm working with right now, we're really zeroing in on a process to promote that ongoing professional development and assessment of each of their team members, because there is family members on the team. So this is another reason when it's even more important, because that family dynamic, although it's fantastically from a legacy standpoint and you have someone to leave your business to, can be very, very tricky to navigate. So putting some structure in place to help manage everybody on your team in the same fashion so that we're all moving forward, we're all progressing and all working towards the same goal. So that's a place where there's a lot of value. Achieving individual and team progress, again, making sure that we all have our individual, things that we want to achieve, but making sure everything that we're doing is funneling up to the team goals. So sometimes when teams are not good in this area, what you have is people working in silos. So they're very focused on what they're doing, but they're not really connecting things to the bigger picture and how it relates to the client. And the last kind of thing in terms of team integration is that whole concept of communicating and collaborating on a regular, ongoing basis to make sure that the left is always in tune with the right. This is where systems and CRM and rules of engagement in terms of team communication is really, really important.
It's really interesting you mentioned that family dynamic, and regrettably we only have a short time with you today. I mean, a lot of the things we're talking about deserve like hours in some cases, and this is no exception, the roles and responsibilities chart. But you're talking about the family scenario, Sherri, and how easier it is when you have that playbook built out. Then it's like, no, we all operate from this playbook on this team. It's not like your dad telling you what to do, your mom telling you, whoever the lead advisor is. It's like, no, we all follow the playbook here. Dad does, mom does, whatever it is, right? So I've run into that exact scenario as well too. And to your point, it's marvelously more effective than somebody that doesn't have it, just trying to integrate their offspring or whoever happens to be into the business. What we're looking at here is the roles and responsibility chart, and this is under the organize your team. It's an essential part of building a franchise-ready team. And quite simply, it documents who does what on the team. If you've ever had an assistant of long-standing get up and leave suddenly and go to Vegas and start dealing blackjack or something crazy like that, you had no idea it was coming, you know how devastating that is. You never want that to happen to you and not have that person's key tasks documented so that the next person moving in can just pick up the slack with little time lost. And that's one of the things this affords. When we get teams using this roles and responsibility chart, and this is going to be one of the handouts for you today, by the way, we're going to send you your own roles and responsibility chart so you can get started on that if you don't have one. It's a matter of documenting on the team who does what. Now, interestingly enough, I always tell advisors that, really what you want to see here is your assistant all over the place. I mean, that's the way it should be. And some advisors say, I'm nervous that, Cheryl is all over this thing and I'm hardly on that at all. And it's like, well, that's the way it's supposed to be, because your role in this business is driving revenue. You're in sales. Everybody else works for sales. Cheryl works for sales, wherever it happens to be. So anything on this, within reason, that's not driving revenue, as far as you're concerned, needs to be farmed out to the next most appropriate person, reduced in frequency if possible, deleted completely from your life. So those are the kind of things that we look to achieve here, leaving the advisor to, left to his druthers about driving revenue and nothing else getting in the way of that. From there, job descriptions get aligned for team members, particular skill sets after a little while. Sometimes you have one team member doing half the things in one skill set, another team member doing the other half. And maybe it makes more sense to streamline them under the person that has superior skills in that area. Sometimes there's a client service champion on the team, like clients can't wait to speak with them. Maybe we should steer the whole client experience under that person, leave more administrative things to somebody that's more comfortable behind the books, all the kind of things that come out of here. And of course, this drives what eventually becomes the procedures manual. This is who does what. The procedures manual documents how these things are done in a step-by-step fashion. You heard Sherri talk about McDonald's earlier. I mean, what did McDonald's do but build basically a spiral coil binder? That's what it looked like back then, and just they sold it like 10,000 times, right? But in it, anybody could follow that spiral coiled binder and run their own McDonald's franchise, just like one across the country. The same thing can be done here with your business, and although we don't want to be McDonald's, we may want to enjoy the luxuries of what this does to our business, and of course, we may want to become a franchise ready down the road and roll this out, bring new advisors on board, whatever it happens to be. Super valuable tool. And I've even had advisors do this chart, scratching their head at first. I'm only a one-man show, Terry. And it's like, well, what a great example and test to see all the things that you really shouldn't be doing and how much you really need an assistant in your life when you start documenting all these things that really don't look like driving revenue at all. And from there, you get a whole brand new job description and a clear idea that, yes, I need to hire somebody. It's a logical investment for me getting to the next phase of my business instead of the mentality of, no, I'm going to sell the lights out and wait till I have enough revenue to afford an assistant, which is counterintuitive and not really rooted in reality for that matter. So that's the roles and responsibility chart. And again, we're going to make sure that anybody that wants one from this call today will receive this so you can get started on your own as well.
Terry, I want to speak to just a couple things on this because this is such that chart is so important to the teams that I work with. And I don't know if you've ever had this, but sometimes I get it back and they'll have all, like they don't put a specific name. It's like the whole team is doing this. And this is what I say to them. I go, okay, I recognize we may all be involved in certain aspects, but who's the real coordinator and champion and really responsible for making sure this happens? And the analogy I use is what happens when you're standing on the street corner watching a building burn and everybody thinks somebody's called the fire department and instead we're just watching it burn to the ground. And that's what happens when you put the word all or team. Try to really be specific around who is doing what. Like every other template at Pareto, add columns, change headings. We really want you to make this yours. I think of a specific advisor. Well, I think a lot of advisors when I go through this, but one in particular, she had mapped this out. She had a 3-person team, very successful. And she had an assistant for, I think it was close to 9 or 10 years. And this assistant was quite a problem. And, I, on a number of occasions, told this advisor she should probably fire that assistant. And because she was tiptoeing around her, and nobody likes to fire anyone. It's not a fun experience. You always have to check with your HR department and make sure you get it all documented and done properly. But I remember one of my happiest days. It was Friday. It was late in the afternoon. I got an email from this advisor, Terry, and she's like, oh my goodness, my assistant so-and-so just quit. And she was like in a panic. It was like the weekend. And my response to her was I emailed her back and I said, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to your business. I can't wait to talk to you on our next coaching call. Okay. And so, basically what we did was we looked at this sheet and we said, well, what was Annie doing and who's going to pick up the slack until we find the replacement? And so there's a lot of comfort. I've had advisors that, have had team members move and shift and transition. Sometimes they're moving across the country, to be with their family or whatever. There's lots of different reasons, but they pull this out. They go, okay, so who's going to manage this until we find a replacement? And then they're also really clear on the skill set of the person that they need to add to their team. So I love this piece, and I tell teams, add this to part of your annual business planning process, pull it out, give yourself a letter grade. If you're not giving yourself an A, ask yourself why. Is there something that needs to be changed with the system, with the process, with the person? Maybe the person's over capacity and someone else needs to take it on. But this is a great assessment tool on so many.
I had a team yesterday ask me this just yesterday. Say, Terry, we have an intern coming on for the summer for 3 months. Yeah. How should that person's time be best used? I said, well, let's get the org chart out, shall we? And just that's the way that goes with the org chart.
So you've heard us talk about the playbook. Terry's referenced that spiral coiled binder that McDonald's got, hugely famous and rich on. In this program, not only are you going to see a sample table of contents for how to build your playbook, but you're also going to have access to a sample procedures manual. Boy, isn't that nice? Some teams I work with just download it, put their logo and date on it, and they sleep better that night knowing that they've got it. And it's documenting, it's already pre-documented with everything that's covered in the Pareto program, but there's also lots of spaces for you to add things that would be unique to your practice. So really great resource in terms of you just sort of methodically working through the process of documenting. Again, like everything else, there's a coordinator. It was on that little chart that we were just looking at. They're responsible for making sure everybody on the team is finishing 1 or 2 processes each and every week, so that over the course of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, the bulk of all your core business activities are found in this. And again, I'm always putting my client hat on, Terry, and the last thing I want to hear when I'm a client is I pick up the phone and I call you and I request something and I hear that they're on vacation. Can I call back in 2 weeks? Yeah, that's not going to fly. I don't care who's on holiday. It doesn't matter who's sick. This is what I want and this is what I expect. And so if that person is away, somebody else on the team needs to be able to execute it. Now, it may take them 5 times as long, and that's okay. At the end of the day, the client request will be fulfilled.
Let's get a quick look at, maybe you've seen this before, the Tuckman model. Bruce Tuckman back in 65 sort of laid this out that every team will go through, and quite frankly, be necessary and inevitable. They will go through all these different stages: forming, storming, norming, and performing. The forming is when the team initially comes together. Their goals are set in place. There's an excitement in the air, like a lot of teams. People are getting to know each other. Feel each other out and the challenges. And then from there, although everybody has the best of optimism, it sort of takes just a little bit, most times anyway. And this doesn't happen all the time, and I'm not an expert, but half the time, let's say. The team goes through some adjustments as they get to know each other. The personalities are fleshed out on the team. People begin to grade against one another, and domineering people start to emerge, and pseudo leaders and all that kind of stuff starts to get sorted out. But the team, eventually works through those conflicts and learns from working through those conflicts and starts to gel. And from there, after that storming, begins to take on sort of a new track, which we call norming, which is really starting to get at things with a fluid sort of effectiveness. Really being excited about the goals that they're working on. The team are used to working alongside one another. They know each other's strengths and their weaknesses. And again, I know this is an oversimplification, but from there you get to the holy grail, obviously, which is the performing aspect, which is, people are really looking towards the future with anticipation, and leadership can sort of back up from that sort of micromanaging of the team and let them do what they do and so forth and so forth. And then interesting, when there is, and I've seen this myself, I know Sherri has too, when there's a new wrinkle in the team, maybe a new leadership or a new partner, or even a new advisor sometimes, people can sometimes go back into the storming phase where the turbulence is as they reacclimatize and then sort of work their way out of that through the norming and performing again too. That's a Tuckman model too. It's really interesting. I saw all those things happen with my own eyes working with teams before I even heard about the Tuckman model. But since I learned about it, it's interesting. It's like one of those things that you hear about and all of a sudden you start seeing them everywhere, right? Yeah. You see the forming and the storming and the norming and the performing in almost virtually every team.
So let's move on to the second part of the framework, which is really team success. And this is, you heard me say earlier, providing strong leadership. Make no mistake, everybody in your team is looking for leadership. And when we're working with teams that are kind of struggling with achieving goals, this is probably one of the key ingredients that is missing. So this is an area where you focus on what we call KPIs or key performance indicators, making sure that you are having annual strategic planning sessions, business planning sessions. We don't care what you call them, but once a year, having a solid off-site brainstorming session around what just happened, what do we need to happen in the next year, how are we going to do it, who's going to do it, etc. I work with a number of teams who do this. It's probably the most productive time they spend. They usually do it off-site because they don't want any of the interruptions, and it's planned at the same time every single year. And that is supported by those quarterly strategic meetings. So if you think about the annual strategic meeting is like plugging in the destination for the year, that quarterly is like that GPS pinging along the way, letting you know that you're on the right track or that you've taken a detour and you need to readdress or redirect your trajectory. And then finally, weekly team meetings. I mean, I really honestly can't work with any teams and get any success out of them, Terry. I don't know about you, unless they do the weekly team meetings. And I know you're going to tell us all about that.
Yeah.
After I talk about the KPIs. Okay, so with respect to the KPIs, there's two types. So there are the quantitative. I'm going to start with those are on the right-hand side. Those are the numbers. Those are the measurable things: assets under management, client retention, number of referrals, trailing 12, revenue, all that kind of stuff. We can actually get to the end of a 12-month period and say and measure, did we achieve that? And then there's the meaningful, or what we call qualitative KPIs. And those are the activities that we do to actually achieve those numbers. So paying attention to the different types of client experience aspects and activities, paying attention to what feeds into advisor efficiency, like creating processes. And it's interesting because I had a team the other day that, had been meaning to do some processes and finally did them, Terry. And when I talked to them, they were like, oh my goodness, the efficiency we've created now that we've actually done what you told us to, written out a process and systematized it on our CRM is amazing. So that activity feeds into them being able to deliver on all their client expectations, earn the right to more referrals, grow their business through new business with existing clients. So two different types. And again, like most of what we're talking about, there's tools and all that kind of stuff within the Pareto program to help you teach and organize and manage all of that.
So the weekly team meeting absolutely is a must. And we start working with teams. What we find is, there's a lot of teams having weekly team meetings. Then you run into a batch of teams that aren't having them at all, which is kind of shocking, really. It's like, well, how do you get things done as a team? And typically it's, people sticking their heads in somebody's office, 100 times a day, which is really not the most productive way to go about doing things. Can these little things wait till the end of the day and be put into an email? Can be delayed to our weekly teaming and so forth? I mean, it's just like a cascade of a trickle-down effect with all those things. And then there's teams that say, we used to do team meetings, but nobody liked doing them, and they were a waste of time. So it's not really team meetings are bad. It's just like, you're having bad team meetings. And one of the ways that you change that is with an agenda. You make this mandatory. It's not an hour-long meeting. It's about, a 20 to a half an hour meeting once a week. People really like them on Mondays. We don't recommend doing client meetings on Mondays for a whole lot of reasons. So it's a great day for the team meeting, a regular day and time, a regular agenda. We have one in the academy, the Pareto Academy, by the way, that's terrific. It covers all the bases. And you know what? If in the meeting you whisk your way through the agenda and there's not a whole lot of wrinkles and great, everybody gets back to their day, but at least you took the time to dot the I's and cross the T's and nothing slips through the cracks. You can bring up new form information on your clients who's experienced an anniversary. Shall we do anything for them? And on and on and on. It's a great an important time for the team to click. It's sort of a high level and set the stage for the rest of the week, 20 to 30 minutes. And once we get into the quarterly strategy meetings, then you can take those off-site or the annual meetings. But the weekly, in a regular place, at a regular time, with an agenda, and really look forward to people enjoying these and some productive things coming out of them. As I mentioned, the day-to-day communication protocol, you really see a lot of sort of flaws. And sometimes the one that always makes me laugh is this person was having a hard time getting people to stop interrupting her. And another time I remember this lady had walk-in traffic because it was a small town and people would just drop in because they wanted to shoot the breeze with her. And here's the answer to both those things. You have to shut your door. It's really not that complicated. And sometimes that's what it takes for you to focus on the necessary thing. And the same thing, of course, can happen with teams, right? You're popping into your office all day long. You've got to lay down some boundaries and identify which teams. Some people say, well, I don't want to feel handcuffed like that with my team. We have a lot of camaraderie and stuff like that. It's like, well, fantastic. Let's get this stuff all sorted out in a very efficient way. Then you have lots of freed up time for camaraderie, right? And so the people that say, like, we don't want to feel restricted that way are typically missing the point that they'll actually have more time to socialize in the proper context as we go about discussing all the things that needs to be done as we have our weekly team meetings.
And it's funny, Terry, because I always follow up with teams on, how's your weekly, we talk about it and then we follow up or using the agenda, how's it going? And I find there's certain times of the year where this is the answer I'll get. We were going to have it, but so-and-so was away and so-and-so was away. And then last week, so-and-so was on vacation. And my question to them is, well, did the business stop? Like, are the clients gone? Because, honestly, it's hard to find a day when, especially through the summer or over the month of December, when everybody's in the office. So just because one person is away doesn't mean the team doesn't meet. And the other thing I want to mention too is, and sometimes I hear this from team members, is one of their biggest challenges is access to the advisor. And if they know that they have access to the advisor every Monday at 10, trust me, they're writing down everything they need to know, and they're getting it from that advisor Monday at 10 a.m. And when the advisor tends to, and I've worked with teams like this who have had to improve on this, tends to jam out, find excuses, double book, overschedule, you are sending a clear message to your team that they don't matter. Okay, so this really resonates strongly in terms of good leadership. Pick a day and time that works and just, do it methodically. So number 3 is the advisor fit process. And so when we're talking about bringing on new advisors, you really want to make not only a great first impression, especially if you're in advisor acquisition mode, so that when they're talking to their peers and colleagues and others who may also be looking for a new home, that the story they tell is absolutely magical, but also the sooner you can, ensure that the person that you're bringing on is a good fit, the less headaches you're going to have. So, for instance, some of the teams that I'm working with, and some of them have like 10 advisors, some have 20, the biggest one has 30. But what they're recognizing is in the early days they were just acquiring advisors, and now they're identifying, and we've gone through that same concept with them of, not all advisors are created equal. Who is your ideal advisor in terms of the assets they are bringing with them? The attitude, we want to make sure that they're aligned with us, that this isn't going to be hard work, it's going to be easy work. And finally, alignment, making sure from a business perspective, now attitude is, more generalized, but alignment is they're fee-based like us. They want systems. They like our branding. They're engaged in what we do. So making sure that there's a good solid overlap there. Otherwise, what you end up is bringing on a new advisor who is really not a good fit. To your point, Terry, I have worked with teams who through the coaching process have recognized that it is a bad fit and they do part ways. In fact, this morning I was talking to one coach, and literally the first 3 calls I had with this team, I knew that someone had to go. I mean, I didn't want to be the one to say it, but I asked all the right questions, and within 3 months that other person was gone. It was just a bad fit. And so bad hires, bad fits, whatever you want to call it, they're a brain drain, they're costly, they take a lot of energy. So take the time to be really specific. This is like a marriage. You're probably going to spend more one-on-one time in the same office with this person than you might even with your spouse at home. So take the time to get it right. I had another team, they were looking for an advisor. It took them 4 years to find the right person. But to your point, they really wanted to make sure, Terry, that they were doing it right, that they weren't going to have to undo this thing, that they were on solid ground moving forward.
Well, it makes sense, right? I mean, you have an ideal client profile, or at least you should. I mean, you should have an ideal advisor profile as well, too. If you don't stand for something and document what you're looking for, you'll probably fall for anything, as the old expression goes. At a super high level now, let's just go through the advisor acquisition flow chart that we use in helping teams put all this stuff into place.
Okay. So just like when you bring on a new client, when you bring on a new advisor, there's got to be a way of assessing that fit. So just at a very high level, and again, of course, we've got tons of resources to support all of this, but making sure there's that pre-appointment phase to really set a positive impression for that very first meeting, which is really general interest. It's like a first date. You're trying to get to know a little bit more about each other, see if you've got the chemistry, to see if it makes sense to move into that second meeting, which is more about initial fit. So that's when we start talking about current business models, expectations, looking at, are they really a fit based on who we've defined as our ideal advisor? And for those people where that answer is yes, we're moving into that third appointment, which is where the devil is in the details. This is where we start getting into the nitty-gritty around expectations, roles, responsibilities, production, all that kind of stuff, all the tricky stuff that really needs to be talked about and put on the table. And then the fourth appointment, the purpose of that is really to outline the structure based on everything we've heard up until that point in time, so that we're ready to put together a solid contract, agreement, partnership to work together, however that model is for you, so that it's go time. But like everything else in Pareto, it's about quality, not quantity, taking your time, doing it right, making sure that at every step in the process, both people are eager to proceed. And it's funny, I had one team where they're like, well, we keep calling them for the, the second meeting and they're not getting back to us. Well, guess what? They don't want to be there. I mean, I don't want to bring someone on that isn't as enthusiastic about working with me as I am with them. So watch for all those signs as you sort of bring someone through this process.
Ask yourself the question: are you ready to go? Do you have all this stuff in place, right? And really, you've struck into the theme of today. And when we bring on a new advisor, and it is a good fit and all that kind of stuff, how seamlessly does this person integrate in your team? And the devil's in the details. I had a lady switch firms while I was working with her, and they promised her the moon and the sun. And it was this immense courtship. And like literally when her first day at work, she didn't have all the tools she needed. She didn't have the support she needed. The person that had been courting her the whole time was basically, it was around, but it was nowhere to be found. And this went on for quite some time. And do you think this lady's ever going to refer somebody else to the firm, which I'm assuming is still important in this business, by the way. But as if, anyway, it's still a struggle. And we're like a year and a half later. And if only she knew known all this stuff before, things might have gone a little differently. So there's all kinds of things you can do to integrate this person into your team that comprise sort of four major areas. Their new home, the office space, and the climatizing to that. The human resources they're going to have to navigate through, right? The marketing as they start to glom on to the team's branding and their marketing, their letterhead and email signatures and anything else that goes under that umbrella. And of course, the client transition, right? Their business being integrated into the new business. So we all end up looking the same at the end of it all. And of course, the answer to that is having a best practices playbook that everybody can follow along with. So the onboarding process is critical not only to select the ideal advisor for you, but to also integrate them in a way that's delightful, as well as being efficient, because you know what? You want to do it again. And ideally, you want the person that was just onboarded to send somebody else over to you, make your life even easier. And of course, that happens all the time, but only if the environment is suitable to introducing somebody else into it, right? So it's all about making an exceptional impression. If you're listening to this stuff and thinking, well, a lot of this stuff applies to my clients as well, too, and bringing on new clients, well, you know what? You're absolutely right. It's the same. It ticks the boxes of satisfying some essential elements of human nature and what we hope to have happen when we switch over to a new firm. And sadly, it doesn't happen all the time.
So congratulations. We're at the fourth and final stage of the Exceptional Teams Framework, and it is that advisor onboarding process. Again, as Terry was saying, we want a professional, proactive welcome approach, one that makes them feel good and invokes trust and confidence that they've made the right decision. We don't want to have any buyer's remorse. We also don't want to make their first few weeks, months really difficult. Anyone who's ever moved firms, no, it's a ton of work, a ton of energy, a ton of time. Anything we can do to make that transition process easier is going to go a long way. I will say that as it relates to these four areas, office space and operations, human resources, marketing and branding, and the client transition, those first three really apply to anyone you're bringing on your team. So, you may not be bringing on a new advisor, but you might be hiring a new assistant or a new associate or somebody that's doing marketing or whatever the case may be. And there's nothing worse than showing up on your first day and you've got a desk, but your computer doesn't have all the programs, your phone isn't set up, you don't have an email signature. It shows that they weren't really prepared for you to come on board, and it actually inhibits their ability to actually get up and running quicker. And I know most of the teams that I work with, their big goal with a new hire is how soon can we integrate? Well, how soon can you have things organized and ready for them to be on board? Because it's these little things that will make them wonder if they've made the right decision. To your point, Terry, a lot of promises made and then disappointment, right?
Okay, so just to sum up now, and we're talking about this whole turnkey approach to maximize client conversion, the tools and resources that you need for every step. Every team should absolutely have this, a consistent approach for your branding, so it's duplicable, like the McDonald's version, transitioning clients. This is all the things that, that jumpstart the move, right?
And, there's an entire client transition process that's really important as part of this piece of the puzzle, because the sooner you can assist a new advisor transitioning clients to your house, the sooner everybody's making money. So we know that the assets need to get moved. We know that we want them to be focused on talking to their clients, lots of conversations, lots of paperwork. Make sure there's a transition support team to help in that short term. Make sure there's a plan and approach that's been outlined. Confirm expectations around timelines and activities, and have everything ready to go. So, in this little process that you'll see there, we've got all the things leading up in the days and weeks ahead, but also even a client welcome process. So again, I've always got my client hat on, and when my advisor moves, it's a big deal to me to sign all those forms, make the decision to follow, maybe work with a firm I've never even heard of before. That's a big deal. And so we've got some processes that really demonstrate to your clients that, quote unquote, once they sign the paperwork, that you're still paying attention, that you're very client focused, and it reinforces that this is going to be a good, positive change. So lots of really neat tools there to help you make sure, once you've decided you want the advisor, how to bring them on board and make their clients, come over quicker. So when it comes to building that operational blueprint for your advisory practice, we've kind of walked through at a very high level. Like Terry said, we could probably spend an hour talking on every one of these and more, just based on our experience working with all kinds of different teams across North America. But, our big wish for you today is to take that who piece, that big chart that had all the business activities, and just really map it out so you get a sense of the way things are, and if anything needs to be shifted. This is a really great opportunity to do some sort of spring cleaning around any redefining of roles, and that's the next step to getting started on your playbook. So if there was a place that I was going to start, this is where I would recommend it is. Every team I work with who does it finds value. I will tell you, I'm a color coder. I always give everybody their own color on that spreadsheet, and they like it because then they see exactly where their name is, but I just like things that are pretty, so it's all good.
I admit it, I'm a color coder. This is the exceptional teaming playbook. We like the playbooks at Pareto for very good reason. Your pilot doesn't, take that plane to take off until he goes through methodically his or her checklist, and thank goodness for that, by the way. The same is true when building team. The same is true when building an advisory business. We have this playbook. We encourage you to use it and make use of it. Even if you didn't have all the tools behind it, it would still be helpful. So please think along these lines. Sherri and I are very grateful that you made some time for us today out of the course of your busy day. We know your time is valuable. We hope we pass on some things that are of value to you, and we wish you the best of luck in not only building your team, but having successful advisory practice.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, no surprise. Terry and Sherri, of course, do an exceptional job. They got a little chatty there, which, of course, leaks into my presentation, which is coming up. So I'll shorten that. It's all good. Of course, as you heard, your team, it's one of your most valuable assets. But you know how we say, like a client, they're not buying something, they're buying into something? You want your team to be tethered. And part of that is buying into your vision in terms of what you're trying to create and what that looks like, and empowering them to be crystal clear on their role, and everyone's staying in their lane. So there's no micromanaging or drifting. It's very accretive, very complementary, and that's where the multipliers are born. I would highly recommend, in the spirit of creating organization and structure, that you request the org chart around roles and responsibilities. You can ask me on LinkedIn for that, or you can just track us down here at the office. But just the exercise alone in terms of examining the why, the who, the what, the when, and the how, it just gives you so much clarity, and then it springboards you into the rest of the framework and the process to put you on the trajectory of that exceptional team status. And that's an elite group. So visit ParetoSystems.com to request that roles and responsibility org chart and to learn more about what our teaming program looks like. We pace that based on the many moving parts and the players on your team. It's very predictable and very much customized. So if you want to create your own playbook and operational blueprint, that's a good next step. Okay, we'll take one last break and then come back for the crescendo, the last event where I'm going to walk through some of my observations and silver linings and actionable strategies that you can deploy to head you down a path where you can add some certainty to what you're trying to accomplish. So we'll see you back here in 10 minutes, and feel free to chime in with us on LinkedIn. Okay? See you in a bit.
Toolkit is a cloud-based CRM, ideally suited for financial professionals and teams that want a simple solution that works. It has been developed in collaboration with Pareto Systems, a leading coaching and consulting firm in the financial services industry. The Toolkit CRM is built to help professionals implement best practices through consistency and automation. Uncomplicate your life, build better client relationships, and run a more efficient and profitable business with Toolkit. The Toolkit feature suite includes an innovative tab system that enables you to open multiple tabs and view contacts, accounts, tasks, and your calendar all at the same time. Click between records to find vital information instantly. Drag and drop tabs to organize your records and work more efficiently. The calendar makes team collaboration easy. View your team's calendar and create appointments. Link team members, contacts, and accounts all to your appointments, and easily reschedule appointments by drag and drop. Organize your day with tasks. Be highly efficient so that you can focus on what matters most. Ensure accountability, as you are on track with full visibility on what needs to be done and when. Know your clients with form. Build stronger client relationships on every contact and account by tracking valuable information on their family, occupation, recreational interests, and money. Seamlessly track client communications. Write notes and upload attachments, link them to multiple contacts and accounts, and track client emails with our Outlook integration. Automate your processes. Create step-by-step activities to replicate your business processes and streamline your firm. Ensure your team delivers consistently every time. Organize and classify your clients to apply consistent ongoing service to each client group. Build your service model and elevate the client experience by automating your services to every unique client group. Use the Toolkit file store to organize your important documents. The file store allows you to access, manage, and share files with colleagues on the go. Sync the Toolkit with Outlook and integrate your calendar, tasks, and contacts. Turn Outlook into a CRM. View and manage important information from the Toolkit right in Outlook. Be productive on the go. Manage your calendar, tasks, contacts, and accounts from anywhere. Be compliant by tracking information on your process and communication with clients. Be confident in Toolkit's industry-leading security with bank-quality encryption and geo-redundant data centers. And be backed by Toolkit's expert training and support team. The best place to strengthen a client relationship is the very place you manage that relationship. Get started with a free trial today